But hi, everyone. My name is Brianna Abbott. I am one of the school counselors here, and I am joined by one of our former school counselors who's currently, sorry, the bells are ringing here. If you can hear those on the screen, sorry about that. But one of our former school counselors, Andrea Gratz, who retired and then was replaced by Mrs. Schnell, and then Mrs. Schnell's off on maternity leave. And so Mrs. Gratz is graciously back helping us as a sub. So perhaps, for those families that are working in her part of the alphabet, maybe you've already had that chance to meet her and get to work with her either in the past or so far this year. But Mrs. Gratz and I are going to be sharing the duties of the presentation today and sharing information with you. I am going to share my screen and we are going to talk a little bit about what to do if your student has a D or an F. We know that this can be really stressful and overwhelming and can create a lot of tension at home at times, especially if you feel like their capabilities are higher than what they're showing. And we want to make sure that that's working in a way that's going to make sense for you and your family. As we go through the presentation, our goal is always to make these short, sweet, and to the point, and then we'll give time for questions and answers at the end, and then get you on your way, because we know that everybody has busy lives. If you have questions as we go through this presentation, we're going to ask you to use the chat feature. So you can just type it in the chat, and then at the end, Mrs. Gratz and I will answer those questions for all of you. And again, we do want to make sure that we're making this helpful and useful for you and your time. So if your son or daughter is struggling with a D or an F, the first thing to do is to figure out where they are with their grades, and looking at their schedule on Infinite Campus and their grades on Infinite Campus is your best place as your starting spot. That's where you're going to be able to access their grades. You can click on the detail of that class and see, are they missing assignments? Do they have a test that they need to make up? Are they scoring well on their tests, but they aren't doing their labs? It just can give you a lot of information about what's happening in that class. So when you look at that information, it will guide you of getting that starting spot. If you need additional details on how to access Infinite Campus, a lot of things we're going to talk about today are also identified on the counselor website. And so we do have a place where on the counselor website under academic, where it's information specific for parents, and accessing Infinite Campus is one of those places. And so we have some detailed steps on how to access Infinite Campus if that's something that you need. When you're looking at their grades, it is too late to drop a class right now without it having appear on the transcript. Students are able to drop a class at the semester point, and so that would be something, if that becomes a need, that you would work with your son or daughter and then his or her counselor to figure out what that's going to look like, what they would be taking instead. But sometimes it's a situation where they might need to make a level change. Maybe they're sitting in an honors class and they need to move to the regular version of that class. So maybe I'm struggling with honors math 3 and I need to move to regular math 3. That's actually something that we can do at any point in time. We don't have to wait for the semester to make those kinds of changes. So it's going to depend on the situation that's at play of whether or not something like that can be a possibility. We would not recommend dropping a class right now because of that F on the transcript. So if a student drops a class after that first 6 weeks, then that would end up with an F on their transcript. And obviously the goal of this whole presentation is how we can avoid having Ds and Fs on our transcript, and making sure of that with the students. The other thing, in addition to Infinite Campus, that I wanted to point out is that you may want to see what some of those assignments look like. So you might notice in Infinite Campus, oh, hey, it's saying you don't have these homework assignments. So the easiest way to access their assignments for many of the classes is on Schoology. And so I think the easiest way to do that is to have your son or daughter log into Schoology and then look at it with them so that you can see what it is that they're doing in that class and what they're supposed to be trying to finish up. But you can also contact the teachers and ask them for a parent access code to their information and to that class's page on Schoology.
So even though it might seem a little bit dreary right now, all hope isn't lost. Only semester grades appear on the transcript, and are calculated in the GPA. So you can see on this graph that 45% of the grade is from first quarter, 45% is from second quarter grades, and then 10% of the semester grade will be the semester exam. So, one of the things that we'll talk about is, what they can do to try to make sure they have every point possible in order to end up with the highest possible semester grade, because that is definitely key. So even though all hope is not lost, it does appear time to make some changes. So as you all know, if we keep doing what we've always done, we'll get what we've always gotten. And when we have conversations with students, a lot of times they'll say, I just need to work harder. And that is often an answer because it feels like it's just an answer and someone will stop asking me questions. But at the same time, many students don't really realize what they even need to do to get better grades. So just a couple of things that, might help them. Instead of necessarily thinking that they need to go from an F to an A in the matter of 9 weeks, they could look at it as, what can I do differently each day that will help my grade improve? So that could be something like doing their homework more frequently, taking notes in class. Maybe they need to ask the teacher to move their seat from, if they're sitting with their friends and they find it hard to concentrate or pay attention in class, then they could ask for a seat change. That would be something that they could do. If attendance is bad, then working on attendance would be extremely helpful. Studying for tests as opposed to just checking off things to do would be definitely something that students might decide would be helpful. Asking the teacher for help or clarification, working with the academic assistants on homework and with studying, those are all some small things that students can do to improve their grade, because really every point matters. We all have those days when something may not turn out to be as quality as what we might have planned. But what students do sometimes is they think that if they only had time to do half the homework, well, it's not done, I really shouldn't turn it in. Well, that's not true. Teachers will often give partial credit, and it comes down sometimes to just a few points. So even if they got their homework halfway done and can get a 50%, that's better than a 0. So even in terms of taking tests, when they are not sure of an answer, if students could just tell what they know, sometimes teachers will take and give partial credit. So that would be helpful for them to do that. Another thing they could do is prioritize. People are busy, so prioritizing is important. Sometimes prioritizing means focusing on assignments that are worth more points. So if you've gotten behind and time is running short, then prioritizing assignments in certain classes that might be worth more points would be a good idea. Sometimes it's about doing the assignments that seem to be the most doable for a student. Sometimes for other people, we like to do what's hardest first and then save what seems to be a little bit easier for later. Sometimes it's easier for students to realize that something has to give, and rather than trying to juggle splitting time, trying to bring up grades all in all 6 classes, maybe they need to concentrate on a couple of classes at a time. And again, that all depends on a certain situation that each student might have different. And then finally, embracing the struggle. We all know, hopefully, how it feels when we have gotten through something difficult. That helps our confidence level when we've gotten through something difficult. So for students to realize that it is going to be tough, and second quarter may be tougher because they're trying to make up for some things that they were not able to get done first quarter. But they will be glad that they put in the work once it's all said and done.
Yeah. And not only are they going to be glad that they put in that work, but especially when it doesn't mean that they don't have to do summer school or those other things. And we're going to talk more about that later. And so when they're trying to figure out, how do I embrace this struggle? One of the things we want to remind you is that teachers are a great resource. So you can reach out to your teachers. You can really push your son or daughter to reach out to their teacher. They can meet with them. I always tell kids, it's not always ideal to try and ask the question in the middle of the class where everybody is there. But if they talk to their teacher individually, they might be able to come up with a much better plan. So then the teacher can share, like if you're talking with the teacher, they can share with you some of the things that they see happening in the classroom, and you can share with them the things that you're seeing at home. And that can sometimes help increase that dialogue of what might the struggle be, and help identify and pinpoint where some of those challenges are, so that we can figure out how to overcome it. And the teachers know what's on the tests. They know what they're testing for. They know what they're looking for. And so being able to ask the teacher for questions about, like, where should my son or daughter be focusing their studying? What should they be using as their primary resources? You know, are they primarily looking at their learning targets? Are they having a study guide? So there's lots of information that the teachers can provide directly to you and or your son or daughter about how to be successful in the class, because that's what they want. The teachers want your child to pass their class. They don't want to have kids with struggling grades, and they don't always know how to help the kid to change that. And so again, that partnership approach can be really valuable. Mrs. Gratz also mentioned utilizing the academic assistants, and the academic assistants are the core teachers. So in English, a math, a science, and a socials teacher. They are all work in what's called the Teaching and Learning Center, which is located in room 209 here in our building. So students that are assigned to academic prep often are assigned to 207, which is right across the hall. And they can check out of room 207 and go to 209 anytime they want during prep. They can also access 209 during lunch or during an options period. So they have flexibility about being able to go there. If you work with the counselor, we can also assign students to be into 209. If they are assigned to 209, they're not allowed to leave. They can't go to the library. They can't use their phones. So it gives them a little bit more structure and support in that regard. But there's also those 4 teachers that are right there willing to help them. And whether a student is assigned to the room or not, kids can go there and use that free support all day. And that's their whole point, is to try and be helpful to kids. And they're great about everything from study skills and studying for helping a student prepare for a test, helping them with their homework assignments that they maybe don't understand, as well as they are really good with strategies for organization and planning. And that organization and planning is something that you can also be doing to support your son or daughter at home. A lot of students just try to remember things in their head, and your brain is great for thinking. It's not always great for remembering all the little details of what we need to know. My guess is that most of you at some point in time are writing down notes about something you need to remember, or putting it in your phone. And that's a skill that you've learned over time. Kids are still trying to learn that skill. And so helping them to realize that keeping a planner or a calendar or a to-do list where they're able to track what things that they're needing to accomplish, and the value of being able to check it off and saying that it's done, can be a really great skill that you can help them, both in showing them how it's working for you. Maybe there's a different app that you've been using, or something that they could try. There's lots of free apps out there for students in study skills and students in planning and organization. And so they can look at that if they're an electronics person. If they're a person that's going to do better with writing it out on a paper calendar, great. It's about figuring out what's going to work for your son or daughter. And again, like Mrs. Gratz said, if it's not working, if what you've been doing isn't working and isn't working for your child, then trying to shift that and find something else that could work would be really important. Students can also benefit from having some routine and a schedule at home. they're probably going to need your help with prioritizing. Mrs. Gratz was talking about all the different approaches that you can take with prioritizing assignments. That might be a situation where they're going to work with you on figuring out how to prioritize those assignments, or they might be working with their teacher. Okay, I would, the teacher might say, I would do these 3 things first, and then if you have time, do these. Those would be places where you can help them too. And then the backpacks. I suspect if your son or daughter has a backpack, it is either probably really empty or completely stuffed full with papers just randomly tossed in. And I say that because the number of kids that will come in here looking for a form that they know they have, and they'll open their backpack and it's just exploding, is a little bit frightening. And so taking the time to actually sort things out, get it reorganized, and having a good starting spot can be a really valuable step that can happen at home.
And one of the things we talked about is that students don't often really know what it is that they need to do in order to make improvements in their grades. And as the cartoon shows, they may have just one thing that they typically try. And then if that doesn't work, it's like, okay, well, forget it. I can't improve my grades. So we have a wealth of resources on the counselor's website to help support study skills. A lot of times students will.
You're gonna miss your.
And I'm going to try and mute that.
Oh yeah, sorry.
No, that's okay.
Yeah. So if you look at the counselor's website, there are a lot of different things that on the right side of the page are different study skills that students, again, just may not realize that doing school is more than just checking off a task that a teacher asks me to do. Studying, if it's not listed as a task, can come last for a student. So they often don't realize that studying even a little bit each day is going to help them get the most out of their studying for tests. A lot of times they don't have an idea of how they learn best, how they can study. So on the counselor's website, again, there's just, Brianne is going through all of those. There's just a wealth of information. So we would encourage you to take a look at that. When we were talking earlier about their grades for first semester and how they were divided out in terms of what the final grade, how it's calculated, 10% of that final grade will come down to the exam or test or project. So really, exam preparation is key. And again, there are many students who have been able to do well in school without having to put a lot of time into studying. So we have just a few suggestions. First is, we think it might be obvious, but studying the first time the night before a big test is not a good idea. Preparing early is key. Reviewing daily is key. We have a lot of teachers who will recommend that every evening for 15 minutes, a student reviews their notes that they had taken for the day. Again, that's kind of the slow and steady wins the race idea. For exam preparation, there are a lot of our teachers who will host study sessions. So students can sign up and do those, and that is an excellent idea. We hear that that is really helpful for students when they attend study sessions. Another thing that we recommend is that students look through their old tests, old quizzes, and use those items to study. Looking at the learning targets that the teacher puts out. Some teachers will give a comprehensive exam review packet. And then some teachers will just refer the students to past notes and quizzes and tests and the learning targets. If you're looking for something that you could do at home, One of the best ways for a student to know whether or not they really know something or if they're just somewhat familiar with it would be for them to explain to you or someone else at home what the topic is, and just try to talk it out, because then they will realize whether or not they actually know something or if it's something they need to do a little more studying on.
And if you're sitting there thinking, come on, bring in that Andrea, we've tried all of these resources, we need something more and something different, then it might be time to pull in some outside resources. We know that there are kids who maybe have needed a specific tutorial on something, and so they've really found success with using Khan Academy and watching the videos that are available there. We've had students and families that have decided that they needed to put some financial support behind it, and they've had to hire a tutor to really help their son or daughter to learn something that they're just isn't clicking yet. And for some of them, they need a total change of pace because doing their work at home isn't working. There are too many distractions. There's too much other challenges happening there, and that they need that change of scenery. And so sometimes going to the library and using the homework help centers that are at the Worthington Library can also be good tools. And then the only other thing that we wanted to point out is that when you're looking at future year schedules, when your son or daughter in the end of January and beginning of February is planning out their schedule for next year, we want to make sure that we're helping them set themselves up for success. It can feel so great to have a teacher say, well, of course you can take this in honors and that in AP, or, well, it's going to be hard, but you could do it. You could double this. You could go without a prep. All of those decisions have big ramifications for the future. Additionally, when you're building that schedule, you're going to have to think about whether or not they ended up failing a class. If they fail a class, then they will have, if it's a core class, they will have to make up that semester. We only do credits based upon semester, so it's not just by quarter. So if they fail for the quarter, that's not what's going to be on their transcript. The only thing that ends up on their transcript are their semester grades. But if that semester grade is passing, then they earn the credit. If the semester grade is not passing, then they don't earn that credit and they would have to repeat that class. So they would either be needing to plan on summer school or taking that class again in the future year. And so we just wanted to make sure that you knew how that part of the process worked, because it is a big part of making sure that your child will be ready and be successful, is making sure that they're taking those classes that make sense for them based upon their needs, their strengths, their future goals and their future plans. We know that we have about 7 minutes left to be able to answer any of your questions. And so far, I haven't seen any come through in the chat, but we do want to answer them. So if you have questions, you can go ahead and drop those in there. The other thing that I will mention while I'm waiting for people to add questions to the chat, is that this Lunch and Learn series is happening about once a month. So we have the next meeting on November 11th. It is a Friday. It is at noon. Again, just to keep that consistent for you. And our topic for next month is going to be the honors diploma. And so that is another piece that we are going to try and help and address for families. And while we wait on questions, I will also, again, make that plug. Our counselor website is wkhscounselors.com. And we have so much information and resources out there to try and make it a one-stop place where you can go to find information, but also that opportunity that we can try to put that information out there to be helpful to you and your son or daughter as well.
And I guess I would just reiterate that the teachers are an excellent resource for parents and for students when you're looking to get some ideas on what's going on in a class and suggestions for improvement. So don't forget to reach out to those teachers.
And I was just typing this response, but one of the questions was, isn't November 11th Veterans Day a holiday? So it is a holiday, and it is for a lot of people. The schools are actually open and in session. And so we will be here. And so our hope was that that would make it a really good and easy day for parents, that maybe there would be less meetings that we were competing with for you and your work schedules, and that hopefully that would make it an easier day for parents to be able to participate. So that was part of our thought process when we were trying to map things out. Great question. Any other questions in general? The first quarter ends for students next Thursday, so we don't have school next Friday. Teachers will be working on grades. You'll be able to see their grade in Infinite Campus. Their grades are due by noon, I believe, the following Wednesday. It could be Tuesday, but I think it's Wednesday, noon on Wednesday. So you'll be able to see where their first quarter grades are at that time. But again, they have through next Thursday. And I know that there are a lot of classes that are, going to have end of quarter projects and tests and assignments. So, this is definitely a busy final week as they push towards that end of the first quarter. I saw a question come up in the chat, and then which teachers help in the Learning Center? So in the Teaching and Learning Center, we have the 4 staff members that work there. Is our Wheezy Elliott. She's our English teacher that works in there. Mr. Wood, Jason Wood, is the social studies teacher. Tamara Harani is the math teacher that's in there and helping. And Emily Terpenning is the science teacher that is in there so that, that she can help students. Another question I received is, what if your child is so far behind in a subject like math that they stop understanding it in 6th grade and all the mentioned resources have been tried unsuccessfully? So that's a really hard and frustrating situation when that happens. And we have strategies and things that your teachers are hopefully doing with the students, and you can talk to us too. We have some classes that can sometimes help support that depending on where they're at with their learning. Some of those videos like Khan Academy, but it is a struggle when kids feel like they have missed those gaps. But there are strategies that we can have that can try and help them. So I would start with their math teacher first and talk to them about what you're seeing and what you're feeling and where those struggles are, and then see what they're seeing and talk to them about, what they think would be the best plan of action as a good starting spot. And then if that's not getting you the information that you're needing, then obviously, reach out to us as counselors. You can reach out to our administration. Like, we're all here to try and help you and your student. We want them to be successful. We need them to pass these classes so that they can graduate and go on to bigger and better things. Great question. Any other questions? We really appreciate you being here and taking the time to be a part of this with us. We try to be really respectful of your time by starting at noon and ending by 12:30. So it's 12:28. You have 2 extra minutes to use the restroom before you have to go back to work. I don't know. But if you have questions, we'll be on here for these next couple of minutes. And then we are going to go about working with kids too. So again, thank you all for taking the time, for being here, and for sharing your kids with us, because we're really thankful to get to work with them every day.